Greetings, my scattered sisters and brothers in the Lord. We have a lot to chew on today. So, Jesus has fed the 5,000 and he removed himself from the crowd. He went up the mountain. He knew that they wanted to make him king. He sends his disciples to the other side of the lake, and then he meets them on the water, and they take him into the boat, and immediately they're on the other side. And the crowd finds out that Jesus is now on the other side of the lake. They make their way over there, and Jesus begins to teach them. And he tells them that they are only interested in having their fill, what he can give them, that they're not really interested in him, in the relationship. And Jesus tells them that he is the bread of life, and he is the bread that has come down from heaven. And so emphasizing that it's him that they need. They need a relationship with him. And instead, they're just wanting the stuff that they think he can provide for them. Now, here's where the conversation goes. Jesus tells them that he is the true bread, that he is the bread that comes down from heaven, that he is the bread of life. And the bread that he gives is his flesh. And when he talks about giving his flesh, that's the bread, he's talking about his death on the cross, that he is going to give his life, he is going to give his flesh that we might live, that we might have life. Again, you can see that this is a very different model of kingship than what the people had wanted. They anticipated that the king that they were trying to get would not be a king who gives his flesh for them, but a king who's actually going to kind of take the flesh of their enemies, a king who's going to take life and put them on top of the world, rather than the king that is going to give his own flesh that they might have life. So Jesus is talking about his cross. And then he goes on to say this, that whoever eats his flesh and drinks of his blood will have life, and he will raise them up at the last day. And so Jesus is the bread of life, but in order to receive that life, we have to eat his flesh, we have to drink his blood, and that's the only way that we will have life. And Jesus goes on and he says a little bit more. He says that the living Father is the one who sent him, and that he remains in the living Father and the living Father in him, and he lives. And then he says that in order for us to live, we need to remain in him, basically as he remains in the Father. So this is what I want us to chew on for a moment. This remaining in and eating his flesh and drinking his blood. So this is where I'm at with it. This is the only way that it really begins to click for me, is that when Jesus talks about giving his flesh, he's really talking about he's going to the cross. And it's through his death on the cross that we are brought into this relationship with the Father. That is through his going to the cross that we experience reconciliation with the Father. And as we experience that reconciliation, then we actually come to life, that we live. We live in the Father's love. We have peace with the Father. He abides with us through the Spirit and the Son, and we find ourselves just energized and alive, and that not even death itself can vanquish that. And so we live now, and he will raise us up at the last day. But that's what he provides in terms of giving his flesh for us. Well, for us to receive it, we have to eat his flesh. We have to drink his blood. And I know that that sounds a little bit kind of morbid or crazy at first, and it certainly sounded that way to those who were listening to him. But as we began to think on it more, to eat his flesh, to drink his blood, I think that's pretty similar to whoever would come after me must deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. To receive the benefits of the cross, we have to take up our own cross. As Paul put it, um, I've been crucified with Christ, and I no longer live, but Christ lives in me. And the life I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. See, I think all of that is the same thing as eating Jesus' flesh and drinking his blood and abiding in him. He gave his life for us, and we have to, in order to receive that life, we have to surrender. And we have to give up our lives in order to receive his life. Again, borrowing from Paul, it is like being baptized into his death, and so that we die with Christ. And that's what's going on with eating his flesh and drinking his blood, that the way that we receive Jesus' life is by dying ourselves, surrendering, participating in his death. And as we participate in his death, eating his flesh, drinking his blood, then we participate in his life, and we receive his life, and we have a place in that fellowship, and we become children of God. So chew on that some, that Jesus gave his flesh that we might have life. And as we receive that life, as we receive him and this gift, then we're going to eat his flesh, drink his blood. We're going to participate in this dying, if you will, dying out to self, dying out to self-centeredness, dying out to our will, so that we are surrendered to his will. And as we are surrendered to his will, we receive life. God bless. Have a great day and eat well.